Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now, the last beer that I reviewed from these guys came about a year ago, and I was really impressed with that one. It was actually a collaboration with a bunch of other breweries actually, which was quite interesting. So this time we are going to do a different style, and we're going to have a look at a beer that is completely their own actually. So yeah, very much looking forward to this. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go down to Australia. We are going to go to the state of New South Wales, and we're sticking to the kind of Sydney region a little bit because we're going to Emu Plains, which is in the very western edge of Sydney, and we're also going to go to Katoomba, which is further out west toward the Blue Mountain region. But that means, of course, that we're going to have a look at my second beer from the wonderful Mountain Culture Beer Company, and this one is called Spaghetti Policy. So it comes in at 7.9% ABV, and this one is a West Coast double IPA. So yeah, the last beer that we had from these guys was a New England Hazy triple or double, I forget, IPA, and that was really good, a collaboration with 7 or 8 other Australian breweries from what I remember, and it was quite a random find at craft beer base Mother Tree here in Osaka. But this one I actually picked up at Lil's Tap Room in Singapore, and it was recommended to me by Kenny, one of the owners. So I do recommend you check out Lil's Tap Room. Kenny's a lovely guy. They do great burgers there, and they've always got a good selection of foreign beers. But they had this one, and they also had a collaboration that Mountain Culture had done with Finback. But he said this one, he personally thought this one was better. And I love a West Coast IPA, so that was why I chose this one. So, like I said, looking forward to trying this one, and definitely cool to return to Mountain Culture once again, because this is a brewery I really do want to hit up at some point. But yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Mountain Culture before, and I'm sure we'll add some more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Australian playlist, along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but quite regularly, because I do come across the Australian beers quite regularly, which is great these days. And yeah, make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, and check out the other links that I've got down there, including to Sam's channel and to Lil's Tap Room as well. So yeah, on to my brewery notes then. So Mountain Culture Beer Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based mainly in Emu Plains in New South Wales, which is just out to the west of Sydney, pretty much on the western outskirts of the city. But the company was founded back in 2017 by DJ and Harriet McCready. So DJ was already a brewer, and he had previously worked for Newcastle Brewery and also for Modus Operandi and Oscar Blues Brewing over in Colorado in the US. But they started a brewery together in Katoomba, which is further out to the west of Sydney. That's the Blue Mountain region. And they renovated an old, dilapidated building dating back from 1912. And this had previously housed the Echo, which was a local paper for many years. And it was also home to a dancing saloon and a video store once upon a time as well. But in total, this renovation took them about 18 months, and they opened their doors to the public in 2019. So this was the first brew pub in the Blue Mountain region, and I believe I actually visited Katoomba, but that would have been back in 2015, which was a few years before these guys got going. I guess I'll need to go back now. But at that facility, they have a 12 hectolitre kit from Premier, and they've got 14 beers on tap with burgers on the menu, and they now operate a new facility in Emu Plains, which has a floor space of 7,000 square metres, and they operate a 25 hectolitre brew kit there. So that's 2,500 litres per brew, and they've got a Crohn's canning line in there as well. They've got an on-site tap room which has 20 taps, and they've also got food trucks there which serve wood-fire pizzas, and the new brewery opened in early 2023, and this will give them a capacity to brew 8 million litres of beer per year when it's going at full tilt, and this is compared to the 2 million that they were able to produce at the site in Katoomba, although I understand the Katoomba site is still going as a little kind of independent arm of Mountain Culture Beer Company. But as of April 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 350 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So they are a fairly prolific brewery actually, and from what I understand they are known mainly for their different kinds of IPAs, but they have been producing quite a few different beers as well actually. So yeah, very interesting brewery, and like I said, one of the really highly regarded ones in Australia at the moment from what I gather. So hopefully we can go and visit them and film some out and about videos at some point soon. But yeah, that's that for your history section of the video. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, do make sure you check out Sam over at Short and Stout Beer Reviews as well, a good Australian friend of mine who has been a fan of BeerTube for a long time and only just got into it himself. But yeah, he's doing some really, really nice videos actually. So yeah, he'll probably be able to keep you more up to date with the Australian beer scene than I can. But yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So in honesty, I don't know what I actually paid for this can because we had burgers and some beers, and yeah, everything was just kind of added together. But yeah, I probably paid a little bit more than I should have for it. But you know, I just wanted to try this one. I really was. It was a kind of fuck it, why not moment. But yeah, there you can see the Mountain Culture Beer Company symbol there, and there you can see the hop flowers down. I think that is that hop flowers. Yeah, it looks like hop flowers dancing around in the spaghetti there, which I do really quite like. But you can see spaghetti policy there, silver top on the can. This one is, I think this is a half litre, does it say? Yep, it is 500 millilitres. It's 7.9% ABV, so normally I would consider double IPA 8% ABV, but you know, 7.9% will let them away with it. But it says on the side here, here's a beer that plays by its own rules, a wild card if you will. In a landscape of West Coast IPAs that are constantly moving the needle closer to their hazy counterparts, we present a more traditional style West Coast with all the dankness and bitterness that saw the style pave the way for craft beer's love of hops. Using an interesting blend of Columbus, Centennial and Mosaic hops, we've created an IPA rich with lemon, grapefruit and berry notes on top of a deep resinous dank body. Sounds like it's right up my street. So yeah, this should be really nice. As I said, 7.9% West Coast IPA, this one. It should be great. So yeah, let's get the beer out into the glass then and see what we make of this one. So yeah, for me, West Coast IPAs can lean two ways. So they can be a little bit more bready and biscuity, such as you know, Pliny the Elder from Russian River Brewing, one of the classics, or they can be a little bit more caramelly and oily, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. That's another typical example or benchmark example of the style for me. So yeah, this one should be quite interesting, I think, just looking at the colour of it. So before the head disappears, we'll examine that. But you can see this beer is poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream, slightly beigey coloured head. The head on this one, some bigger bubbles, some medium-sized bubbles on the surface, and then a few bumpier ones going further up. But then, yeah, it's a little bit foamy. But yeah, you can see that the the colour of this one is really nice. It's not the deepest of ambers that I've come across, but it still has that nice little bit of rich amber. I think on the camera to you guys, because the light is a wee bit dim because I'm filming at night time, this one actually looks a little bit more yellow to you guys on the camera than it does to the naked eye. Although in fairness, like I say, it's not too amber. I think you're maybe getting a true reflection of the colour at this point actually. But you can see my little boy's IKEA kitchen behind me. But yeah, you can see the beer has a degree of natural haze to it. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts that you put into the beer will affect its colour too. You don't often have to care about that with IPAs, though, apart from if you're talking about fruit IPAs, which don't really exist that much anymore as far as I'm aware. But yeah, this one looks as if it will be, from the colour, I think this one could be somewhere in the middle of the bready, biscuity and more caramelly leaning thing. I think it's maybe going to lean a bit more toward the bready sort of things though. If you had a bit more caramel in it, or American Turo or whatever, I think it would be a little bit more of a rich amber thing. So 2 of the kind of defining factors for me of a West Coast IPA would be that West Coast IPAs have that deeper, danker bitterness thanks to the use of early addition hopping. And they also tend to be mostly barley malt in their malt base. It's not unheard of to use a little bit of wheat or oat, and those are the 2 ingredients that give New England IPAs their haziness. It's not unheard of to use a little bit of that, but for the most part, a West Coast IPA is only barley malt. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind. There's not too much visible carbonation in this beer, just a little steady stream of bubbles up the side of the glass. But all in all, it looks as you would expect from a West Coast IPA. Now at this point, we've gone over the technical side of the West Coast IPA, we've covered the appearance. I think it's time that we move on to the aroma section of this video. So let's have a wee look at this. Oh yeah, this smells pretty damn nice. Now I'm going to say straight away though, in the aroma, and I think this can is pretty fresh actually, because these were released, I know they made it to Hong Kong only, a couple of weeks ago actually, so the can is still pretty fresh. But yeah, in terms of the aroma of this one, it's not the most pungent of aromas actually, and it's really nicely balanced. You're getting a lot of oily, fruity character out of it as you would expect. You're also getting a little bit of, you're getting a good bit of bready and malty sweetness out of it, and you're also getting the good green component as well. But I mean, overall, it looks, or it smells, I should say. It doesn't look, it smells very, very nice, this one. Kind of what I would expect. So yeah, we know the 3 hops in this one. What was it? It was Columbus, Centennial and Mosaic. So all 3 of these are American. Of course, Columbus is usually used as your early addition hop, your bittering hop. So that gives you about 12% alpha acid, and it's got this kind of big spicy floral note to it. Centennial is about 12% alpha acid as well, and that's going to give you a sort of big kind of zesty lemony character, whereas Mosaic is 14% alpha acid, a little bit newer than the other 2 in fact, and that's going to give you a little bit of earthiness in its green component, but also a really nice kind of juicy tangerine kind of quality to it. So yeah, before we look at the aroma, those are the things you should know about the hops. But yeah, in terms of the malty backbone of this one, then I'd be very curious to know whether they've used Australian malt in this one, because the breadiness comes across a little bit differently actually than either German Crystal, which is a bit lighter and crisp, or the American Turos, which are a bit more oily and sweet. There's something, this is kind of somewhere in the middle. Might have a mix of both right enough. So yeah, the aroma in this one, the backbone of the beer is that lovely kind of fresh sort of hedgehog bread crust quality. You're getting a little bit of that out of this one. So yeah, lovely kind of fresh hedgehog bread crust in there. Of course, you're getting a little bit of kind of cracker and things out of that as well. So yeah, bread crust, bit of cracker, maybe even a little hint of woodiness. But yeah, there's a lot of like sweet brown wholemeal bread in this one. Lovely kind of white, yeah, lovely sort of white, yeah, lovely kind of fresh, fluffy white bready characters coming out of this one. There's a lot of, on top of the bready character, there are a few little elements of cracker in there which are nice. And I think this beer, it does lean more toward that bready side of things. But that said, it does have a good little bit of sweetness to it as well. There is a little bit of that caramelly sweetness. So with this one, you're getting a good little bit of, you are getting a little bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of it. But there's also a good little bit of that oily sweet caramel that you want from the West Coast IPA. So you've got a good balance in the malt base here. I'm curious to see how this actually develops in the flavour. But yeah, the malty base in this one is nothing unexpected. It is what you would expect of the style, and that's what they say. They're wanting to make a good old school West Coast IPA. But yeah, the way that just all pieces together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, it's the malty side of things is good. So let's focus on the green component. The thing that's a bit surprising about this one is that the green component isn't overly pungent. Now, when it comes to IPAs, you have three types of hoppings. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That usually gives you a lot of deep, dank flavour and aromas. You also have late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly flavour and aroma and a brighter green component in terms of your flavour and aroma as well. And then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, that gives you pretty much all it gives you pretty much all flavour and aroma actually, and again it gives you a very bright green component in terms of flavour and aroma. So yeah, West Coast IPAs tend to use all three, which is why they smell deeper and danker and they're generally more bitter. But New England IPAs rely pretty much solely on late addition and dry hop. It's not unheard of to use a wee bit of early addition hopping with them, but yeah, mainly late addition and dry hopping. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, it actually doesn't come across as being overly deep and dank in its aroma. It's quite reserved actually. Like I said, Columbus in this one is the hop that you would expect to be the early addition hop. So yeah, for me, the green component of this one's kind of what you'd expect. There's a little bit of earthiness in there, which is going to come from the mosaic. You've got a little bit of a herbal, woody sort of thing as well. And then, yeah, you've got a bit of that spicy floral aromaticity, but it's not overly pungent. That's the interesting thing. So there is a little bit of that kind of nice floral aromaticity at this one. You have to sugar the beer up a little bit, actually, to get that to come out for you. But yeah, you've also got that more zesty, grassy sort of thing at the front of the nose too. And that is your it's the Centennial that's going to give you the more zesty, grassy side of things. So yeah, interesting. Definitely interesting for sure. Now for me, the fruity character on this one, because I think we've covered the green component now. The fruity character on this one for me is definitely more, it's definitely kind of what you'd expect if you know these hops. You've got a little bit of a light lemony character in there, but I think the juiciness of the mosaic is what really kind of dominates the aroma here. It's a soft, juicy, tangerine orange in there. Other than a bit of lemon and a bit of orange, what were they saying on the can? They said a little bit of berry and a bit of grapefruit. I don't really get either of that, to be honest with you. I'd say it's mainly a kind of tangerine orange and a little bit of like a lemony note, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's all about the mosaic. I think the mosaic is the one that's really taken the front foot in the aroma here. But yeah, all in all, a really nice smelling beer, this one. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Spaghetti Policy, a 7.9% West Coast double IPA from Mountain Culture Brewing in Emu Plains, just out in the western part of Sydney in New South Wales down in Australia. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost. Whatever you want to say. We're in Japan, kanpai. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm just waiting with it to see if the bitterness builds up a little bit, and I think it is, to be honest. I will say it does come across very nicely. Really solid West Coast double IPA, this one. Yeah, let's just get the rest of it out because this is going to go down very easily. There we go. There you are. Look at that. Perfect pour. Nice. So, apart from the gap. But yeah, Mountain Culture again have done a really solid beer with this one. as I kind of suspected it would from the colour, it leans a little bit more toward that bready side of the spectrum. So it's good. I mean, it gets a bit sweeter further into the aftertaste, and it does take the bitterness a little bit of time to build up in this one. But yeah, definitely, it actually reminds me to an extent of some of the German brewed West Coast IPAs that I tried a number of years ago. Berliner Berg IPA is one that comes to mind. This beer, just the vibe of the malty character really reminds me of that. So maybe this is brewed mainly with German malts, but like I say, I know the Australians have a lot of their own malts. So yeah, probably some of that's in there as well. I'd be curious to see the brew sheet of this beer. It's always interesting to see what flavours you pick up. But yeah, the main thing is the beer tastes great and it's definitely worth trying. So gives you everything you'd expect of the style, definitely on the more bready end of the spectrum. But let's break it down and describe the flavour that wee bit more in depth, as we always do. So the way that this one goes together, I think will be the way that this one goes together is really nice. It starts off with a little bit of dryness when you take it in, and it just sweetens up and bitters up and gets more fruity the further that you go. But we'll start on the middle third of the palate, as we always do. So the backbone of the beer, you've got that fresh white bready. You've got that fresh white bready bread crust in there that I was talking about. That kind of hedgehog roll type thing. So that's definitely sitting in there. So when you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of woodiness coming out of this one. So yeah, the little bit of woodiness is there, and then above that you've got an ever so slight crackery layer. But very quickly on top of that, you get this more sweet, wholemeal, oily, brown bready character coming out of the beer, which I really enjoy as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, the crackery note in this one, and the way the way that the kind of brown bready character comes out, it does, as I say, it sort of just adds to the sweetness that you get out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, you've got that quite dense, sweet brown bready character coming out of this one. And then the further you go further up from that, and you get the lighter, kind of more white bready character coming out of this one, which is quite nice. And the white bready note is actually quite sweet as well, but then the further you go into the aftertaste, it gets a little bit more, it just gets a little bit drier actually. And there is a fair wee bit of dryness in the malt base of this one, and that makes me wonder, it's particularly when it's at the back of that middle third of your palate, I do wonder if there's maybe a little bit of like Pilsner malt or Carapils or something like that in here. Just because that dryness really lingers there. There's just something that's telling me there's a wee bit of Pilsner malt in here. So yeah, above the kind of white bready character in this one, that's when you get the little oily circle in the middle of your palate, where it's that's where you get that nice oily circle in the middle of your palate then, when it's you've got the sweeter caramelly notes in there. So yeah, the sweet caramel, you've got that sweet caramel in the dead centre of your palate. Then as you move further out from that, you've got a little bit more of, you definitely have a little bit more of kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit note there, but in the dead centre of your palate, obviously the caramel is a bit more concentrated. That's the booziness of the beer. As you move a little bit further out from that, you maybe get little elements like Werther's Original fudge, something like that. Then as you move out toward the extremities of the middle third of your palate, it's a bit more kind of biscuity and things. So yeah, the way all of that just pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. So gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, that's the middle third of the palate covered with this one, I think. So yeah, if we go to the back third of your palate, as I often say, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. And remember, dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours tend to come out further forward. So yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate. You get a little bit of the bready build up in there. You can feel the brown bread, the white bread, and then the wee bit of what I suspect is Pilsner malt. Then the base of the back third of the palate, you've got the bread crust. Again, the kind of drier aspect of the bread crust there. Wee bit of an almost crackery layer. You can feel the brown bread sitting above that, which is taller, more airy and lighter, but still drier. The white bread sitting above that too, which is lighter, taller, more airy and drier. Then you get a wee bit of what I do suspect is Pilsner malt creeping over the top of that. And then, above everything else on the back third of the palate, you start to get the yeasty notes out of the beer. So, let's look at those. So, yeah, it's the brown bready. The brown bready aspects of the yeast are quite interesting. This one, you've got a little bit in the centre of your that yeasty character there, so you can feel that it's a little bit of a sweet brown bread in the middle, but then you've got this really light, woody, airy sort of brown bread with a bit of a crackery edge to it, and all of that, as I say, sits on top of the back third of the palate, and you can feel the flavour of the flavour of the beer on that back third of your palate is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together a little bit more. So yeah, the way that the malty and yeasty character in this beer goes together, I think, is really, really quite nice. So yeah, I like that about this one. So let's move on to the green component of this beer. And as I say, the bitterness in this beer builds the more that you drink of it. So in the back corners of the palate, you get that nice little bit of earthiness in there, which is going to come both from the Columbus and from the Mosaic. But yeah, as you move further forward, it gets a little bit more herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, it gets more and more sort of floral and aromatic, and there's a wee bit of spiciness to this one as well. But round the front curve of your palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, and a wee bit more zesty. And as I say, I think that comes from the Centennial for sure. So yeah, on the front third of your palate, then we've said what we need to about the green component. Let's look at the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there again, the wee brown bread, the white bread, and then the wee bit of kind of you get the brown bread, the white bread, and then you get that little bit of kind of Pilsner malt sitting on top of it. Then the base of that kind of brown, the base of that front third of your palate, you've got the hedgehog bread crust, the brown bread, the white bread, then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at the fruity side of the beer. I think, again, I'd say the fruity side of this beer is quite straightforward. I get a lot of the orange from the Mosaic. The Mosaic's given me a hell of a lot of kind of juicy tangerine orange in this one. You know, further back on that front third of your palate, there's maybe a little bit of pear. I can see maybe why they would say a little bit of grapefruit into the aftertaste, but for me it's not really kind of proper grapefruit in the same way you get from Citra or Chinook or Galaxy or something like that. So I disagree on the grapefruit side of things a little bit, but yeah, there's a wee bit of there's a wee bit of that kind of peary note in there, a wee bit of a tangerine note, as I say, and then further forward toward the tip of your tongue. You're getting more of a kind of lemony character out of this one. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really, really quite nice. So yeah, I like that about this one. It's the way everything goes together in this beer is really nice. It's a solid, more bready leaning West Coast IPA. This one, it does take the bitterness a wee bit of time to build in it, but you know, you find that in quite a lot of beers these days. I'm finding it, certainly with the more hazies and stuff I drink, the bitterness does take a wee bit of time to build up actually. But yeah, all in all, really good beer this one, and certainly cool to try a West Coast from Mountain Culture. I love tasting different styles from breweries that are known for one thing. I think this is always really interesting. But let's round off this one with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, definitely pushing toward the top end of mid-bodied. Carbonation does have a degree of crispness to it. But all in all, it's actually quite smooth, this one, quite clean, and to a degree a little bit oily. So yeah, I do like how all of that pieces together in this particular beer. In terms of the IBUs, I think this one, the more the bitterness builds, I think it's up at a sort of 80 IBU part of the spectrum. I think it's somewhere up there. The malt base has a wee bit of dryness underneath, a little bit of smoothness in the middle, and then you've got a wee bit of sweetness kind of sitting on top of that. And then yeah, you've got a nice wee touch of kind of oily, fruity character coming out of it too. So yeah, the way that all that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. It's as I say, really good West Coast double IPA. This one, leaning more toward that bready end of the spectrum. But yeah, certainly gets a big thumbs up from me, and thank you to Kenny for the recommendation for this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Certainly cool, always cool to review some nice Australian beers for you here on Rampant Lion Reviews. So yeah, as always with my reviews, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Mountain Culture social media as well. We will return to these guys, I'm sure. You know, all the usual YouTube stuff. Please like, subscribe, share, whatever you like. But yeah, most importantly, drink some local craft beers, support your local breweries. And yeah, I'll see you guys in another review very soon. I do have a few more Aussie things to review when I get back to Hong Kong very shortly. So you'll see those very, very soon. Till the next time, slàinte, skål, and cheers.